the negative aspects that we had were there was absolutely no insulation in the building, and it had the old Super 6 asbestos roof on it, which had to be replaced because it was extensively damaged. Completely out-of-date services, and the building needed to be sealed to allow it to be air-conditioned fully. This was speculative office space. All the electrical services had to be replaced, and all the plumbing fixtures had been filled with concrete. And the last negative on it was the internal layout. Because it was originally designed for dormitories, had a very cellular nature, which isn't really acceptable for contemporary office space. And then the ugly side of the building. I spent 3 days in the middle of summer documenting this building. And imagine in the heat of a Brisbane summer in humidity, being in a closed-in building because it had all been boarded up, that had had 20 years of pigeons living in it and crapping in it. And that's a smell that you never forget. So in the building, there's places where fires had been started, plumbing fixtures had been filled in with concrete in an attempt to deter squatters, which didn't work. And there's extensive water damage through the leaking roof. We used syringes everywhere. Thankfully, some people had tried to sort of safely dispose of some of their needles. But a key question when we look at the adaptive reuse of buildings is always going to be, how do we turn it from one thing into a different use? And with the former police barracks, the original building was made up of a series of small cellular rooms, which weren't really what you want for a contemporary office space. And also, the existing building had a separate larger room, which is this room out here, which is detached from the rest of the building. So to address these issues, we sort of were able to put an internalised connection to that room. This allowed us to air condition that space from the main plant rooms. The service zones were on either side of the corridor. Each of the plant rooms on either end contains a separate AHU for those zones. And to open up the office space, we were allowed to cut large openings in the walls. The next question we had to answer was, how do we provide services? And a typical answer for this in heritage building is always to expose the services, but it's not a route that we wanted to go down. We felt that it would clutter the space and detract from the character of the buildings. So instead we pulled the ceiling level down in the corridors and ran all our ductwork through there and our electrical cabling. And with the opening up of the walls these walls here, we're able to conceal a lot of the electrical comms and data in a new timber trim around there. So the services are really quite hidden. Other common issues with providing services on heritage buildings is locating condenser units and getting lifts in. But in this case, the roof is a really significant feature of the building, so there was no possibility of condenser units on that. And we also wanted to avoid interrupting the fabric of the building by introducing lifts to it. Solution to both of these problems came by introducing a physical link between the existing heritage building and the proposed new building. And this allowed us to have all the condensers for the site on top of the new commercial building, run condenser water through the ceiling void of the bridge, and also if visitors to the existing barracks building can use the lifts in the new building and traverse across. So that's the bridge as it resolved. And that little thing there is one of the service pipes coming through, so there's a very tenuous connection. And the bridge actually is completely cantilevered off the new building, so it doesn't touch the existing building. And then that's an internal view where you can see that the minimal services, there's a little air conditioning grill, electrical and power's all hidden behind there, and the lighting is extremely efficient, and dropping it down to that lower level meant that we weren't wasting energy lighting the higher levels of the room. In all projects, there's particular hurdles that need to be jumped. The ones that we had were providing services, insulating the roof, opening up the dorm rooms, fitting services into the available space, and making the space suitable for future tenants. And this is some photos of the end result. So this is a view from Petrie Terrace of the cleaned up existing building. This is in the bridge link. Not only does it allow for the concealed services, but it gives you a really great high-level close-up view of the building, which you wouldn't normally get. We marked out the location of the existing jail walls and foundations in the ground plane by reusing the stone from the archaeological excavation. And this is on the higher level of the new commercial building, which shows one of the cell buildings. Internally, the space is generous and warm and feel very peaceful and uncluttered. And we referenced the original layout of the buildings by the use of a different timber species in those openings. So to summarise the results, in design and leasing negotiations, we were targeting a 4-star ABGR Neighbours Now energy rating. We're now coming towards the end of the data collection period, and it looks like we're achieving a 5-star result, which is fantastic. And the data is showing, and we anticipated that the heritage building actually contributes a lot to that rating. It contributes disproportionately to the amount of floor space. So what that meant was we were able to be very cost effective in delivering the new construction, and we did that below the cost of the benchmark that we were given by the client. The next project is the Cairns Cruise Terminal. Arkhefield, in association with TPG Architects in Cairns, are the base building architects. Karen is the project leader and she's here today, so if anyone has any questions on that, I might flick them over to her, and if you can find her afterwards, you can ask her. Converge were the heritage consultants, and MGF were the services consultants. Being a state government project, it was a lump sum, so it didn't allow for a lot of collaboration. Historically, it was the first reinforced concrete wharf in Australia, and finished in 1914, used as a supply port during World War II, finished its use as a port in 1964, and since then has been used as a storage building. That's just a view of the outside of the original building, and internally it looks very much like a storage shed, not like a modern passenger terminal or function space. This was our dream for the exterior and the interior. And that is a couple of weeks ago where the construction stands. It's due to be finished in a couple of weeks. The major sustainable initiatives in this was, because it was just a single skin corrugated iron fabric over a timber portal frame, it just basically transferred the heat straight into the building. So we're able to put a secondary layer of sheeting on the roof and high levels of the walls with insulation between that. We could have gone down a route of completely sealing the building and conditioning it, but instead we looked at a mixed mode system where air is delivered at 27 degrees from the duct that you can see in the top left. Air also comes in through louvers and mesh at high levels, and it's circulated with the big fans that you can see. We also use recycled timbers from the walls in the signage and bollards around the site. And so internally you can also see the extra amount of light that was brought in. So I was thinking, as I was putting this together, where we're going as an industry, and I strongly believe that we're just at the beginning of it. What we're doing now, we'll look back in a couple of years and think that, how little that we were doing. There's an inherent balance that we need to make between sustainability and heritage, but I think that at the moment we need to weigh more to the sustainability and probably allow for more fabric changes to improve the performance. And ending with a rhetorical question, are we there yet? Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Of course, sort of if you know the Queensland or the Brisbane property industry, you'll know that they had a tough taskmaster in that. The site had sat there for 20 years. I think it was the subject of at least half a dozen major development applications and revisions. I can still remember Tom Blake, when he was doing the dig of the former jail, used to ring me probably at least once a week and sometimes every second day to keep me updated with progress, and he always had panic in his voice.